Welcome to
أهلا
the
بكم
second
في
episode of the
الحلقة
series
الثانية من
entitled The
سلسلة
Box of
حلقات
Islam.
صندوق الإسلام.
In the previous
اتكلمنا في الحلقة
episode,
اللي
we
فاتت عن
tackled two
نقطتين، عن
points.
نقطة
The
تجديد
first
الخطاب
point
الديني
was
وموجة
about the wave
الإصلاح
of the
اللي
religious
شغالة
speech
اليومين دول
renewal
في
and
الدول
reform sweeping
العربية،
all over the Arab
واتكلمنا
countries
عن
these
مقارنة
days.
بين الإسلام
The second
والمافيا،
point,
واحنا هنكمل
we talked
الحديث
about comparing
في
Islam with
النقطتين
the
دول
mafia.
في
Within this
هذه
episode,
الحلقة.
we will continue
بالنسبة
covering these two
لموضوع
points.
الإصلاح،
But first I have a comment regarding the subject
طبعا
of
شيء كويس
reform.
جدا إن
It
واحد
is a
زي
very
الأستاذ
positive
إسلام
matter from
البحيري اللي
Professor
أنا
Islam
أكرمه كل الاحترام
Al-Bukhari,
طبعا،
whom I highly respect, that he
إن هو يجي
suggests that we
ويقول
should
لازم
purify the
ننقي
Islamic religious
التراث
history.
ولازم
We should pay attention to the issues within the
نشوف
science of
المشاكل اللي في علم
explaining the
الحديث
narrations of
واللي
Muhammad
في
and his
السيرة،
chronicles. But the problem
لكن
is that he
المشكلة إن
separate
هو
completely
يفصل
between the
تماما
issues within
بين
the science of
المشاكل
Muhammad
الموجودة في
narrations
علم
and Islamic
الحديث
history and between the
وفي
issues
التراث
inside the chronicles of the Prophet and the
والمشاكل
Quran itself.
اللي موجودة في سيرة النبي وفي القرآن نفسه.
This is
مشكلة
a big
كبيرة.
problem. The second
المشكلة
problem I
التانية اللي
noticed
أنا
while he
شفتها وهو
dealt with this
بيتعامل
problem
مع
is the
هذه
excess of bragging
النقطة
that he showed.
العنترية الحقيقة.
This is a
إحنا عندنا
problem,
مشكلة،
because
أنت
we are
عندك
facing
حيطان
thick
خرسانة
concrete walls,
أسمنت
the Islamic
بتحفر فيها
traditions,
بضوافرك،
and you try to dig in
فما
it with your
ينفعش
nails.
مبدأ شجاع السيما
Thus,
في
the
التعامل
principle
مع
of the movie
التراث ومع
Superhero does not
المؤسسات
work in dealing with the
المتحجرة
religious history of Islam and
الصادقة.
the stubborn rusted
ما ينفعش
Islamic
تيجي
religious
وتقول
institutions.
أنا ههدم لكم علم الحديث
It doesn't work
بكلمتين.
to show off and say
صعب،
that,
مش كده.
I will take down the science of
وصعب
Muhammad
كمان
narrations by two
إنك
words.
التراث وتنقية
It doesn't work to
التراث
say that I will cleanse the
وأنا عايز
Islamic
5 من علماء
traditions,
الأزهر
and I want
يكتفوني
5 Islamic scholars
والعبد
to
لله
hold
مسك
me,
التراث
and I
تناح
analyze
والحاجات
the
دي كلها.
religious and
مش
can take all
كده.
off,
إحنا عندنا مشكلة
etc.
حقيقية،
It doesn't
ذاكرة
work this way.
أمة كاملة
The reality of the
مصدية.
Islamic problem is that the
ذاكرة
collective
الأمة
memory of a whole
مصدية.
nation is rusted.
فمحتاجين
So, we need patience and more honesty when dealing with the issues of the
صدق
Islamic
أكتر
history.
في التعامل مع مسائل التراث.
The Islamic
التراث
history cannot
لا
be
يمكن
separated from
فصله
the Prophet
عن
and the
النبي والقرآن.
Quran. The same as if you
إن
have
أنت
an
يبقى
old car
عندك
that is
عربية
rusted,
قديمة
without brakes, every day killing 4 to
مصدية
5 people,
ما
then you
فيهاش
come to
فرامل
say that the car is
كل
not the
يوم
problem,
تموت
the road
3
has
4
bumps
5
and the fuel is
وتيجي
bad,
كل
and the
مرة
manufacturers were the
تقول
reason behind the
لا مش
problems.
العربية مش السبب، الطريق هو اللي فيه مطبات والبنزين مغشوش واللي صنعوا العربية هم اللي السبب، المشاكل.
No,
لا
the car
العربية
and the driving method is the
وأسلوب
problem.
قيادتك للسيارة هي دي
Yes,
المشكلة.
that is the problem.
لو عندك بيت
If you have a
قايل
ramshackle
للسقوط
house,
ما تجيش
about to
تدهنه بلون
fall,
جميل
do
وتقول لي
not
ده
paint it with a
إصلاح.
beautiful color and call this a
ما دام
repair.
البيت
As long as the house is
قايل للسقوط،
ramshackle, the only
الحل
remedy is
الوحيد
to take down and rebuild
هدمه
it on the right
وإعادة
foundation.
بنائه على أساس سليم.
If you ask any
أي
engineer
مهندس
in
في
the whole
الدنيا
world, he
هيقول
will
لك هو
tell
ده
you
الحل،
that this is the remedy.
لكن احنا مش عايزين
But
مهندسين،
we want no
مش عايزين
engineers.
متخصصين،
We want
احنا
no
عايزين
specialists. All what we want is to get away from the
يعني
embarrassment.
زي ما بيقولوا
We
نحفظ
don't
ماء
want to
وجهنا،
confess.
مش عايزين نعترف،
We don't
مش
want to
عايزين
confess that the
نعترف إن
trouble started
الأزمة
from the beginning of
من
Islam itself.
بدأت من بداية الإسلام نفسه.
Now, I
كنت
started with the previous episode
بدأت الحلقة
comparing the
اللي
emergence
فاتت
of Islam and
في
the
عمل
emergence of
مقارنة
mafia.
بين نشأة الإسلام ونشأة المافيا.
I said that the island of Sicilia was too much affected by the Arab tribes that migrated to it in addition to the barbarian culture as well. However, the Arab tribe system affected more in establishing the system of collecting the tributes, or collecting the jizya.
وسحب الجزية.
Afterward, it continued to develop until it became a terrorist organization with branches along the whole world, as all of us know. This is the same as with Islam, which started from idea of tributes, or jizya, and developed later to become a business. Now, Islam is a business covering all the countries in our world.
موجود في كل بلاد العالم. طب نشوف
Today,
جزء تاني
we
من
will cover
المقارنة
another aspect of the
بين
comparison between Islam and the
الإسلام
mafia.
والمافيا.
The notion
فكرة
of the
الأب
Godfather.
الروحي.
The
الأب
Godfather
الروحي
or the
أو
Padrino is the
البادرينو
leader
يعني
of the groups of
اللي
mafia.
هو قائد مجموعات المافيا.
The tree of
المافيا دايما
mafia is consist of the
بتتقسم
capo that is a leader,
إلى
and there
في
is the
واحد
capo
اسمه
di cape
كابو
that is
اللي
the
هو
leader of all
الزعيم،
leaders of the
وفيه
mafia.
اللي هو كابو دي كابي يعني زعيم كل الزعماء بتاع المافيا.
The
الأب
Godfather
الروحي
is very similar with the
شبيه
idea of
جدا
the
بفكرة
Prophet.
الرسول.
Nobody
هو لا
can touch the
مساس بالأب
Godfather.
الروحي.
Do
ما
not criticize
تنتقدوش،
him.
ولو انتقدت
If you do
تتقتل،
criticize him, then you get
ولو
killed. If you betray him,
خنته
you get
تتقتل.
killed. For those of you who
وحتى
attended
يعني
the movie
اللي شافوا
starred by
منكم
Marlon Brando, The
الفيلم
Godfather,
بتاع
and viewed those who kiss his hand. You can see the same idea of dealing with the religious leader in the villages of the Islamic world is the same as the Godfather idea exactly. The Mafia views itself as an ethical organization. When the Mafia tell you its history, they tell you that we are an organization established for the good of Sicilia independence. We've united the tribes in Sicilia. They tell you that we established peace and security. We were taking money from the rich and give it to the poor. They tell about themselves like this: the Mafia is an organization of mercy. But the problem is with next generations that distorted the picture of Mafia and abused it in terrorist purposes. It is the same idea exactly that about the emergence of Islam. The story that the Prophet started as mercy and help for the helpless, collecting charity from the rich and giving it to the poor, etc. Of course, within them, there is mercy. The Mafia community, within itself, there is mercy. The Mafia community, within itself, there is charities and they allot money to each others. The Godfather has the largest share of the loots, and the rest is spread as shares with those who did the theft, collected the tribute, sold drugs, or any activity they work in. The notion of the Quran that the fifth is for God and the Prophet exists in the Mafia as well. By the way, by tracing the source of the idea of the fifth is for God and the Prophet, we find the following. The Saliq that we mentioned in the previous episode. Those who helped the Prophet in his first invasions and helped him to hijack the convoys of Quraysh. They have the system that the leader of the Saliq, thugs, has the share of fourth from the loot. But of course, the Prophet was little bit more generous than this thug's leader. So, he was taking only the share of the fifth for him and his close circle of companions. That was necessary to ensure their loyalty. Then, he allots the rest of 4/5 to his soldiers. This is concerning the point of the Godfather, his role, and his share of the loots. You will find it the same within the Mafia and the beginning of Islam. The second part is concerned with dividing the people into the enemy and friend, or the believer and infidel. The Mafia holds a very strict system which is, as long as you are a mafioso, a member within the Mafia, you cannot befriend anybody outside the Mafia families, because that is dangerous. Except if this friendship done under the supervision of the leaders of the Mafia, and for a goal that seeks the benefit of the Mafia. Such goal can be as freeing somebody from a court judgment or gathering information about something. This same idea exactly exists in Islam. The principle of friendship with the others is rejected in Islam. The Quran quote about that is, "You who have believed, do not take the Jews and the Christians as allies. And whoever is an ally to them among you then indeed, he is one of them." But in what circumstances this friendship is permitted? Here it comes the idea of taqiyya. What does taqiyya mean? It means that, if me as the Muslim fall into some danger, then I can lie, I can pretend to befriend the infidel to be freed from this danger. Or, if there is some benefit of the Muslim that he will make benefit for Islam, then he can lie and say that he is not a Muslim, or he can befriend someone or any other reason. There is a famous historical assassination in the Islamic history, that we will review later, which is the assassination of Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf. Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf was a Jew. He recited poetry that criticizes the Prophet that he introducing into the Quran quotes from the books of the Jews, the Old Testament, the Talmud, and the Madras. The Madras is a book explaining the Torah, which was very important because so many stories from this book exists in the Quran, and we will retouch this subject afterward. When Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf mentioned that he pissed off the Prophet, it was true that the Prophet was tolerant in many situations, but there was 3 things that he never tolerated. First, if somebody became a Muslim, but afterward he leaves the Islam, this represents to him the highest treason, and all of you know what had happened for whoever leaves Islam. Second, if somebody was criticizing the family tree of Muhammad. This is a very major point that we will dedicate a complete episode for. What issues existed in the parentage of the Prophet himself? The third point is if somebody questioned the resources of the Quran that says the Prophet is liar, or quoted from another book. This subject was really pissing him off, and there is people died for this reason. One of them was Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf. When the Prophet heard these reciting, the Prophet said, "Who would get me rid of him?" There was a necessity for the man who would go to kill Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf to lie, in order to make a trick on Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf and get inside the castle of this man. The Prophet gave the killer permission to lie in order to go and kill the man. This was concerning that friendship is forbidden with the non-Muslim or the non-mafia, except if there is a benefit or trick that will be of benefit to Islam. Another common aspect between Islam and mafia is that the pious and being religious is one thing that has nothing to do when it comes to how to deal with the enemies. That is, the private thing is one thing and the general thing is something else. You may find the mafioso as a religious man, praying in the church for example, and at the time when he leaves he shoots and kills someone without seeing any contradiction between the two actions. He might been just heard in the church for example the preacher telling him to love your enemies. But in his mind, he doesn't take the principle as the enemy mentioned in the preach is the one he just killed. No, in his mind it's different. This is one thing that is different than the other. The man who just been killed deserves it. The situation is the same for the believer who is a soldier of Muhammad. He prays in pious and cry while praying, and when he gets outside the mosque, he beheads people as if it is very normal situation, without any difference from the mafioso. Why is that? Because his religion has divided the world for him into believer and infidel, and the infidel for him is like slaughtering animal as in the Quran 7:179. Those are like livestock, rather, they are more astray. The God of Islam will burn him in hell. Why you have compassion with him? Hence, the Muslim prayer does not forbid him from violence. But it has the opposite effect. It can encourage him before going to battle and before he go and enslave women and children. The other point we mentioned in the last episode was the looting and collecting the tributes. Also, the role of the thug Salik at the beginning of the attack of the Prophet on convoys from Medina. That represents the foundation on which the Islamic State had been established. The foundation that we cannot get rid of until our very day. The characteristics of Islam that helped it spread, establish itself and invade the world, are the same troubles that we suffer from today without being able to get rid of. Now we come to the last point in the comparison between the Islam and the Mafia, that is the idea of punishing those who run away from Islam, the atheists, or the betrayers. Muhammad established in Medina a state with one of the best intelligence systems in the world. Yes, the best intelligence system in the world. The more he launched invasions and the more the number of Muslims increased, the more he suspected in the loyalty of the Muslims believed in him. How come? At the beginning, his group of Muslims were small, and they were really believing in his message. Those people believed in him because since the days when he was in Mecca, because they seen some beautiful speech, especially at the beginning of Islam, and in the Mecca verses of the Quran. Until our day, many Muslims are using this good side of Islam, and quote from it the verses that calls for peace, tolerance, mercy, thinking about the creation of the heaven and earth, compassion toward the needy and others. It was there, because Islam is not totally built on the bloodshed. There was some part of the foundation that was good. Those who believed in him at the period of Mecca were real believers. On the other side, those who believed in Islam in Medina afterward, the majority of them either became believer in Islam through compulsion, or those who had no other choice because their tribe collapsed and been invaded, or the profiteers, who found a real economical opportunity for their benefits. That is, if he would join the camp of Muhammad, he will earn some loot. He will get money income. He will get slaves. He will get benefits from this invasion. When this group of profiteers increased around the Prophet, he started suspecting them, asking himself, who is with me and who is against me? Does this profiteer really believe in my ideas or not? Thus, he started to construct a system of self-monitoring for them. The first step was to make prayer 5 times a day, so as to group them 5 times a day. One prayer at 4 o'clock a.m. in the morning, and once at night, and 3 times at the middle of the day. That was for him to make sure they are there. When we read that the punishment of the abandoning the prayer can reach up to death, what is the explanation for that? The explanation is that he suspected in those who don't join the prayer would join the camp of the enemies and bring me a disaster. He would hurt me. That's why he says that, I thought about taking a flame and burn the houses of those who pray inside their houses. Can you see how high the level of paranoia of the Prophet had reached? He suspected them. The same of what President Bush said, the one who is not with us, is against us. The one who is not with me is against me. This reached the level that there was a blind man living on the outskirts of Medina, asking the Prophet to permit him to pray at his house because the trip is too long for him and he is blind. He asked him, "Do you hear the prayer call?" The man answered, "Yes, I do." The Prophet told him, "Then you must come." Can you see how far this paranoia of the Prophet has reached? Afraid of their treasons. But of course, they say Islam is a religion of mercy. That was the situation, that he was afraid from their treason. Yes, afraid from their treason, and according to this logic, anybody that wouldn't join the prayer should die. So, what about this who abandons Islam completely? He established for them a self-monitoring intelligence system. That is, according to Quran, if you show what you think about or you hide it, the God will hold you accounted for it. That God will punish you, even for what you are thinking about. That you should be careful, if you thought to betray me, or thought to do something against me, God will tell me about it. As the Quran quote 50:18 man does not utter any word except that with him is an observer prepared to record. That is, there is 2 angels sitting on your shoulders, doing the rule of the special security of the state. Those are the ones who record everything, whatever you think about, whatever you say, and whatever you do. It is a genius system. That gives the Muslim a feeling that if he turns right or turns left, he would find himself watched. That was the source of the idea that came in Muhammad narrations: whoever changed his religion, you kill him/her. And you find all the reformers try to go around it and say something about Ikrimah, and say this narration is weak. No, this narration exists within the correct narrations. And it agrees with how the Prophet dealt with so many people. We mentioned Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, who said a poetry about Muhammad and been killed for saying poetry. A poet said a poetry contains his opinion that Muhammad quoted into the Quran from the books of the Jews, the Torah, the Talmud, and the Madras. Al-Waqidi told the story, and Ibn Taymiyyah quoted from him in his book Al-Sarim al-Maslul, the sword, against the Prophet's cursor. What's the story of Asma? She said poetry about the Prophet. Do you pay attention? She said poetry. Islam, the religion of peace. So,
راح
the prophet heard from her poetry.
وعصماء بنت مروان
He
دي
couldn't take it easy.
نايمة وسط أطفالها، وحتى رواية الواقدي بتقول إن هي كانت بترضع
Hence,
طفلها.
someone called Amir ibn Uday
فأكلها
went to her tent, and while she was sleeping among her children.
ورجع
Furthermore, the
النبي
story of
يبلغ.
Waqidi said that she was breastfeeding her
النبي
child.
كان
This man killed her and
يعني
went back to the
فرحان بيه.
prophet to tell him. The prophet was
يوريهم
happy
كده
with him that he said,
يعني
"Look at a man who brought
انظروا
victory for
إلى
God and his
رجل
prophet,"
نصر الله ورسوله
saying that
بالغيب.
about the
الله
killer
ورسوله
Amir ibn Uday.
بالغيب. عمرو ابن عدي.
We have
عندنا
another
واحد تاني
poet called
برضه
Ibn
شاعر
Cattle. Ibn
اسمه
Cattle had
ابن
2 slave women
خطل.
signing. He was
ابن
telling
خطل
poetry,
كان
and
ليه
the 2 slave
جاريتين
ladies
بيغنوا،
were
هو بيقول
signing.
شعر وهم
This
بيغنوا.
Ibn Cattle
ابن
entered
خطل
into
دخل
Islam,
الإسلام،
then left
خرج
Islam.
من الإسلام.
So, the prophet declared his blood legal to be shed on the day when he took over
أهدر
Mecca.
النبي دمه يوم
This man is the
فتح
one whom
مكة.
he said
هو
about
ده
him,
اللي
"Kill
قال عنه
him, even though if
اقتلوه
he was hanging by the
حتى
curtains of
لو
the
تعلق
Kaaba,"
بأستار الكعبة.
which is
وهو ده اللي حصل
exactly what
بالظبط.
happened.
قتلوا ابن خطل
They killed
وهو
Ibn
متعلق
Kalal
بأستار
while he was
الكعبة،
hanging the curtains of the
وقتلوا
Kaaba.
جاريته
Then they killed his
عشان كانت
slave woman
بتغني
because
أشعاره
she was singing
اللي
his
بتشتم
poets that
فيها
cursed the prophet by it.
النبي.
Now, read the
اقرا
history
بقى
of
تاريخ
Mafia,
المافيا
and
وشوف
count how
قتلوا كم
many
صحفي
journalists
كتب
they killed
كتاب عن
because of
المافيا بتاعتهم
criticizing
فيها.
him.
اقرا
On
بقى
the
تاريخ
other side,
الإسلام من
read the
أيام
history
بشار
of
بن
Islam
برد
from the days of
ابن
Bashar
المقفع
ibn Burd, Ibn al-Makafaf,
الحلاج.
al-Halaj, and many others.
ماتوا ازاي
How did they
بسبب
die
انتقاد
because of
الإسلام. شوف
criticizing
فرج فودة،
Islam?
شوف
Look
رائف
at
بدوي
Faraj
اللي
Fuda.
بيجلدوه في السعودية،
Look at Raif Bada whom is wiped in KSA.
وشوف
And
الآلاف
look at the thousands
والملايين
and
اللي
millions who are
خايفة
afraid to
تنطق
say a
كلمة
single word
تنتقد
criticizing
الإسلام.
with it the Islam.
وشوف
Look at the journal
صحيفة
Charlie Hebdo that
شارلي
they killed
إبدو
10 of its
اللي
staff because they
قتلوا
painting a
منها
figure.
10 عشان رسموا رسمة.
This is the problem of
هو
Islam.
ده مشكلة الإسلام.
And meet you in
ونلتقي
the
في
next
الحلقة.
episode.